How's it going, everybody? It's Mystical here. For those that don't know who I am, I'm a poster over at Sim Racing Design. Those who have subscribed to my YouTube channel and wondering who I am. If you're just interested in the racing videos, you can totally skip over this video. But I got a lot of requests to make a visualization / video to show this new method on how you can paint in 3D for NASCAR 2003 cars. So that's basically what this video will be. I do want to preface saying this is a little technical, so it may be kind of confusing for people who are not experienced with painting cars and all the methods, but it's more of a setup also. I'm not going to do a step-by-step on how to actually paint a car, more just the demonstration of how to get to that. There's plenty of tutorials about this program 3D Coat that I'm going over on how to actually utilize it and use it to the fullest extent, because it definitely is way more useful than just painting cars for NASCAR 2003. But I found in my process of doing higher poly models and texturing and work for other games that actually can utilize normal maps and displacement and all those other high technology stuff, it still works really great with NASCAR 2003. So that's what this video is to show, basically. So for the most part, everybody's used to, when painting cars, you have this 2D view in Photoshop or GIMP or whatever. You've got your view and you got to paint. Like, let's just make a square here. Got my layers. I got dual monitors, so I got it over here. So we just make a new layer. You've got your standard way of painting, either if you do shapes or you use the actual paintbrush and all that good stuff. But I'm not actually here to show that. I just wanted to give an example. And then this method still works great, I'd say, for 80 to 90% of the cars people want to paint, especially if you're new to painting. Using a 2D painting editor is totally fine and totally works. But if you have something more complex, like I've made this lightning decal design, you've got all these crazy lines and stuff here, and that can get really hard to line up the lines on something like this. So, I've had to do this many times in the past, and I made this very high resolution, so I'm going to have to scale it down a bit. But, you've got to manually rotate it and scale it, and, blah, blah, blah. If it goes, like, across the hood down here, it won't line up exactly. Or if you really want it to go on the, I meant the roof. If you go, like, the hood and you want it to come to the side of the car, like something like this, you've got to split this up into multiple images, and cut it. And sometimes you have to warp the image to actually make it fit. And then you've got to rotate it again to fit it on the front. Or say you're trying to shove it on the back here, and then you have to go all the way up here, and then you've got all this distortion and connection. Like, this would be a nightmare, and I've had to do that before, and in most cases I've had to, unfortunately, compromise and not paint it exactly the way I wanted it, or hide the really crazy details between these two sections, because it would just take hours of work to line up all these little lines. Well, with and then also I also forgot to mention, then when you're scaling this image, it's destructive. Unless you have a rasterized image, you're losing quality, as you can see. And then if you try to scale it up again, it's then you got to re-import the image. It's just a pain and stuff like that. So now it's fuzzy. It might be hard to see with a YouTube video, but let's just remove that for now. But yeah, when it comes to complex painting, especially if you're a skilled painter, this may not be, you get hit by a cap, basically, and you're like, well, what do I do now? So today I'm here to show how you can use standalone professional 3D painting tools that are made for, complex 3D models and stuff, and you can actually apply these complex textures to that program and to your cars. But before we even get there, we have to prep a model, because it's in a 3D space, so we can't just use a texture, obviously. We have to have a model to paint on. that then translates to the UV map of this. So if I turn on the wire mesh, you have your wireframe. For those that don't do much 3D modeling, but they've been painting NASCAR 2003 cars, this wire mesh is made by the model, but I don't want to waste too much time explaining all these technicalities because I'm assuming you know most of this, so we'll just minimize Photoshop for now because we'll come back. And I'm going to be using Maya, but you can use Blender. I say 90% probably of the people use 3ds Max. Personally, Maya is mine, but it really doesn't matter because I'm just going over basics here. Let me just turn off the texture. You can get your models from the cars you paint if you do your own render scenes, because most mods release with 3ds Max scenes, so it's already a set up rendered scene. This is my own personal render scene that I've made. But basically, you want to go into that render scene in whatever 3D program you have, and you need to export this model to be compatible with 3D Coat. And the most common compatibility model format is OBJ. So to do that, you're going to want to export your model as an OBJ. But you need to do a little bit of prep work. While you can export your entire model into 3D Coat, it becomes a bit more complex to turn on and turn off all these models because they can all be painted on in 3D Coat. And the only thing that NASCAR 2003 really cares about that you can actually paint on your template is, the hood and the body. These are the two separate parts that the Gen 6 15 BR mod has, but most are just a full. So you really only want these two. But before you export it, because I've actually got a shader already applied, it's generally a good idea to just apply a standard shader to it, just something blank. I suppose, actually we don't actually need even the roof rails because that can be painted in Photoshop. You don't actually need to paint on that, but I mean if you want to export it too, but I recommend just doing the simplest. So I've already put a new shader on here, and in 3ds Max it might be different, but for here I can rename it to whatever, so I'm just going to call it car. I recommend naming your shader something really obvious though, so when you're in 3D Coat you know exactly what it is. And I recommend putting the same shader on the two pieces, so because you could put on one on different if you want to paint specifically just on that separate. But anyways, we've named it car. Let me make sure here. Actually, I think for here just name it car 1, but it's the same shader, but there we go. So car and car 1. Let me smooth that over. But anyways, really all that matters is open up your scene in 3ds Max, or if you got a Blender or whatever. Make sure you've either deleted everything else, or for at least with Maya, I believe 3ds can do it too. Just select what you want, and then I'm just going to go to export selection instead of exporting the entire scene. And then I've already got it here. I'm just going to save over. I'm just going to call it car model. So it just asked me to overwrite. But basically, that's really all the work we need to do for here now. So we've exported our model as an OBJ, which I should actually just show quickly, which it's just OBJ format. It probably should be all caps OBJ, but yeah, basically just OBJ works fine. So now we need to open 3D Coat, which is the program that I'm going to be going over. For those that don't own it but are now interested in this, I believe you can get a 30-day free trial. Or if you know you're going to get a lot of use out of this, you can buy the amateur license, which is a perpetual permanent license. It's not subscription based, so you own it for life, I believe. I think because of Christmas sale, because I'm doing this during Christmas, this video, I think it goes for like $79, which I think is a steal. I personally bought the professional edition because I do other work than NASCAR 2003, but I think for the majority of NASCAR 2003 users, you could just get, the $80 version, which will suffice. But anyways, that's if you want to get it. So when you first open the program, I've reset the layout because I have dual monitors, so I had everything out, but I wanted to show what it looks like for your users so they can see it here. You will get this window that should pop up. If it doesn't for some weird reason, you can go up to File and New. But Basically, there are two ways to import your model. You can do UV map mesh or the paint UV mapped per pixel, which is actually the mode we'll be in. But I recommend doing UV map mesh, which I'll get to after this. So we'll import it. You just click it, and I've already got the directory. You get your model and go to open. You should get a window like this. And really, since we're doing very simple stuff, and NASCAR 2003 doesn't need a lot of other options, and the model's already been prepared because it's a mod for the game, so it's already been unwrapped and everything. Really, all you need to make sure is that you hit triangulate. I believe 3ds Max works in tries, but other programs like Maya may not, so I recommend just having this toggled on. And then you can also set your texture width and height, which, if you're familiar with painting in Photoshop, most people work in 1024 or 2048. But I'm going to keep it on 1024 for now because I'll show how you can change this later. And by default, it should be kept to keep UV. But you want to keep the UVs, obviously, because we're going to be using the UVs that the mod makers made to paint. So just hit OK. And you should see, because I chose the UV version, I'm in the UV section up here because there's all these modes. You should see your model that we made from Maya exactly the same. It's got all these weird colors on it, which is good. You want to see this, and this is showing that all these islands here for the texture are right here. So it's the exact same UV layout that you would be painting in Photoshop, but here this is like actually we're a program that can make these, but we don't want to change it. But the reason why I recommend going into UV mode is because you can make sure that the model you exported didn't screw up the UVs or anything, and you can see here it's totally fine and all that. So it looks good, basically, is all you want to do. But basically, just go over to the paint mode up on the top here, and now we're in painting mode, where you'll actually do your painting for the car. Alright, so now that we're in the painting section, this is basically the majority of where people who are interested in this workflow for NASCAR 2003 painting will be. By default, you should see your car model. If not, then you might have done the process for importing incorrect, but it should show up. For some reason, it's really tiny. I mean, the grid might be really big, but you might have to zoom in. And to know how to move around and all that stuff, you can choose your preset up in camera. And I have set to Maya, but I believe you can even do hotkeys, custom hotkeys, to make it like 3ds Max or any viewport and 3D program you're comfortable with. But basically, your model should show up like this correctly and all that good stuff. And to show that this is very much like Photoshop and has the traditional 2D editor, if you go up to Textures, Texture UV Editor, you will see your model here. And by default, it may not show up, but whoops, just hit the wireframe and there you go. So this is the the thing that you see in Photoshop all the time. This is the wireframe, and it's right here. Let me actually move it up so it's bigger. I used dual monitor, so I had to reset everything because this is what it looks like for everyone when they open it, so I didn't want it to be different. So yeah, and we'll just make this a little bit bigger temporarily. So, just like Photoshop, you could paint in the 2D view if you wanted. So we're going to make this layer 1. We're just going to fill it. And to know how to do all these processes and filling and what actually tools do, I recommend, if you do buy this program, to watch the tutorials on YouTube and stuff that actually exist. I don't want to go over and waste everybody's time with that stuff. I'm here just to show the process mostly. Basically, now that I got that, it's a little bit easier to see. You can go over, choose a color. And what's great, it is a professional tool, so it has all, if probably more options than Photoshop, even in terms of the way you like to color and paint and do all that stuff. So just to demonstrate, let's just pick a color. We'll just do this, make it a little bit bigger. So now you can see the 3D view as well. What's great is you're not only painting in a 2D surface, but you're also painting in real time on your 3D model. So you can see it's actually updating, and you can see it actually has some depth to it. I'll actually explain how you can turn that off, because for NASCAR 2003 that won't actually show up because you won't be exporting those depth maps because it doesn't work in the game, unfortunately. But and just to show, you can paint in real time, and as you can see, it's actually connecting. So if I paint from here over to here, you can see it's doing the traditional, oh, it has a disconnection, and like, oh crap. So it's actually your traditional 2D, okay, now I gotta paint on the back, blah blah blah. Or if I'm making a shape like let me just delete these, zoom in a bit. I mean, you can do like shapes and stuff. It has the curve tool as well. So as an example, I'm just gonna, you can actually edit the splines too, but if I just hit enter, you can see it's made it, and it's created the thing, and it's actually interactive too, so I can move it around and hit enter again. What's also great is there's a little black box here. You can save your curves. So if you made a really complex like fire design, flames design, you can actually export your flame shape and then or remake it again, save it as, and you can create templates of curves. So even if you are only interested in 2D painting, you might find this really useful, because you could make a whole new paint scheme and have a library of custom curves. And I'm sure, because I've actually found for other games, I found assets for 3D coat in terms of materials and other primitive models and brushes and stuff, but I'm sure there's presets out there of really cool curves people have made that you might find useful. But that's what's really awesome about this tool in this program. But enough about the 2D. Basically what I'm saying is everything that you can do in the 3D space with the tools, you can basically do in a 2D way as well. Let me just hit escape. Just clean this junk off. You can also, I'm going to now go back to regular because we don't really need it. But as you can see, you can update real time and paint real time in 2D. But I'm assuming the main reason, whoops, just want to squeeze this up. The main reason you want to use this tool is to actually do it in 3D, because that's actually where it matters. But just to demonstrate, you could even create a curve, and it's actually a little faster in the 2D space or 3D space. So I mean, you can just go all over the place. Like, here we go. Now it's connected. It's a little messy because it's got the weird other maps on it, but I'll show how to turn it up. So anyways, so the main thing is putting complex designs on your car that actually connect to all the sides, basically. And what's really cool, and while NASCAR 2003 is usually limited to just one mesh, if you go over to paint objects, you could turn off separate things and only paint on, so say you wanted just the hood a different color, and I came back here, let me just go back to traditional brush. If I paint it all around and I turn the hood back on, you can see it's not affected by it. But we're just going to clean that off. So really complex models, that's really useful. But I mean, if you for some reason wanted to import wheels and windshields, even though if you paint on those, it doesn't matter for NASCAR 2003, you could have all these layers here and then turn them off, so you're only painting on specific stuff. But it's really all about that. So the main thing is you want to put stamps, basically what they're called, or logos, decals, on your car in complex ways that actually overlap. And you can import them. So on the brushes, or alphas, these are brushes basically, you can import, black to white alphas, but you can also import images. So I made this lightning one as I showed you guys, and you can see it right here now. And if I click, it shows up. And I'm actually going to turn the colors off, because you can actually affect your stamps by colors. So if I turn it off, you can see now it's a bit better. Now, you notice it kind of has the rigidness and specularity and all that craziness. That's because the layer has all these settings like depth. So if we turn it down, turn roughness and metal, Just turn them off because NASCAR 2003 doesn't need them. Now you can see it's my original design right here. I actually got a bit of blue there from the other layer. Let me just create a new one here for us. Okay, here, and I'll delete this one. But yes, let me go back to this. So now, gonna rotate this. You can use the 0 and 9 key to rotate and the right mouse to zoom in. You can also, if you'd have standard brush, you can go to stamp, which is really good for this. So you can click and drag. And because I have the color turned on, I right click to disable. Just like Photoshop, you could do no color or X to switch between, but I'm having it disabled. Oh yeah, and it's a new layer. Sorry about that. So I'm just gonna disable. Actually, what I should do is keep the base layer. I don't need depth. Just put it to default. Okay, new layer. Now we'll just turn this stuff off. All right. So with the stamp, you can drag and click. And you can see we've now placed it, and automatically it laps over and it knows where to go, basically, in terms of the position you've chosen to paint it on. It's actually overlapping. If we go back to texture, you can see, unlike the 2D view when I painted and it wasn't actually connected here, it actually is connecting from the front. And there, it automatically scales it and stretches it and it rotates it exactly how you want it to fit, which is really awesome. And you can also do orthographic views. So you could really get precise, So, I mean, I can go all the views, top, down, everything. Just like you could in a 3D program. But, this you could paint like this like you would more traditionally in Photoshop, except on certain views. But I usually recommend, just get out of that mode. Orthographic also is very nice because it doesn't skew as much to the standard camera. But you have choices, basically, and that's what I'm wanting to show on how you can paint this stuff. So I just go like that and go out. You can see it didn't completely find everything because I was at a weird angle, but you do have those options. So we're going to kind of go up here with it. Actually, let's make it even larger just to demonstrate how crazy and cool this is. You can do the whole thing. So you can see automatically it's stretched and it's connected every line in your editor from the roof to the sides. This is like the worst part here. Let me zoom this, scale it down so you can actually see what I'm pointing at. Like here, this is the worst point. I know, nightmares, trying to connect, especially with the stretching that the default base or model usually has. It was always a nightmare to try to put pieces together. But you can see for anything in terms of a video game and as a hobby, this is more than acceptable, I think, in my opinion, for professional painters. I mean, you could erase sections of this if you didn't even like it and then put another lightning stamp, So, I mean, I'm just showing very, very rudimentary step and process here. So you'll also notice if I zoom in, you can start to see that it gets really pixely. And this is kind of one of the problems that Photoshop 3D mode had, is it wasn't really perfect and it had a lot of drawbacks. But you can alleviate this because if you remember, we imported the textures and the resolution is 1024 by 1024. So what I recommend doing is you make your resolution that you work with higher. And to do that, go up to Edit. And you go to Mesh and Texture Resolution. And you can see right here, you can set it. And if you're a 1024, 2048 painter, you could go there, or you could do 4096 and outport it and then resize it down so it's more crisp. But for now, we're going to do 2048 and you just hit Enter. And now it's automatically scaled. As you saw this get larger, this has been scaled as well. So in a way, it's kind of done like what Photoshop does. It just enlarged my image because I already placed it. But now we're going to turn this layer off. Just put these back down to 0 again. when we paint our stamp. So we're almost down. I think I slid a little too far. You can also just click here if you want instead of dragging, but I like dragging. Anyways, so we got our whole thing selected, and now we're gonna just cover the car with lightning again. For those that know me on the forum, I had those interstate batteries cars, you know, and I had to compromise lots of times because, you know, doing a crazy lightning effect like this, no matter how professional, and if you're in the industry doing professional design work, I don't care who you are. If you're doing like Photoshop work, I almost guarantee if you had to paint a lightning design like this that connected on this mesh as fast as I'm doing it right now, I'm pretty sure you'd lose. That's what's so great about this tool, is it's doing all of this like almost perfectly. You know, it's smart enough to know how you're doing it. So we're going to cover every terrible part that would be to paint on this car. Actually, let's do this side like this. Then another one. So you can see I'm getting every part that would be a pain in a matter of minutes. You can do this for designs like this, or we're kind of making like a NASCAR Thunder design right now. That lightning scheme, if anyone remembers. So yeah, we've covered every part, and you can see it's all connecting like it should, and it knows how to separate and go to the next layer. And it's done there. And because we're in the higher resolution, let me zoom in. So if you get really close, obviously it'll be lower, but I mean, if you need even higher, you can make the texture thing higher. And you can see it's how much better it looks just from upping the resolution. That's what's so great, is when you're resizing this image, it's non-destructive, especially since I made my lightning 2048 by 2048. It's really huge. So I've got very good resolution. So obviously the stamp image you're using too matters, but you can see in terms of scaling it, unlike Photoshop, when I scale it, it's not affecting it. It's more being a matter of your actual resolution you set when you painted. But I mean, it's great. It's so awesome how you're able to just do this so quickly and stuff. So say we've done what we needed to do here, we can basically now export our base, you know. Oh, and I also wanted to show one last thing, because even though this would be shown in tutorials for NASCAR 2003, I think this is very useful, and I'm sure people are like, well, that's great, Mystical. You made once in a lifetime an asymmetrical base, and sure, I could technically paint, both sides and do all that fun crap. And I believe with layers, because I've only had this program for like a week, and I've spent hours already in it, but I'm sure there's ways to flip your layers and, do like what you did in Photoshop to get the other side. But, most bases are symmetrical. Well, don't worry about that. I'll just make a new layer. There's symmetry, and you can go here, and we can set our axis. So we want to do X, so, left to right. We can even do the Z axis. So now we got front, back, back, and front. So now, if I place a stamp, this is what's really cool. You can make some really cool designs like this. If I place a stamp now, whoops, I've accidentally, it should automatically. Oh, it's doing the sides there. I think I need to select probably local space. Oh yeah, and because it's a new layer, let's put these back to 0. Nope, it's not doing it, but it's doing the sides. Whoops. Yep, I want to keep that one. But yeah, you can see it's automatically doing some symmetry. So you could paint from one side to the next, and I'm pretty sure the Z-axis works too. Ah. Maybe I had to turn it on and off. Nope. I did have this working earlier, but it is painting from side to side there. I'm actually kind of surprised that it's not doing the other view. Let's just turn those off. There we go. I don't know why it wasn't working before. I just enabled, disable. It's probably because I clicked all the axes, but now, sorry about that. Usually it should work, but just had to toggle it. Now if I click, there we go. So now you can make some very easy, very quick symmetry designs. So no waste of time, all that good hassle, you know. You don't have to worry about doing a ton of waste on trying to make your stuff, which is really, really great. So I just go back to like an alpha or something. Something more traditional you could even do in here. So we'll just do orthographic. Whoops. There we go. If I just, you know, draw like a square for bottom base. Oh, I still have it disabled. And I still have the depth. There we go. And you can do effects as well, which I should go over that very quickly too. But yeah, you can see. Now if I just do the front of the car, it's almost actually wrapped around there very nicely. And I'm just doing very, very basic here. So it almost cut the back too, but that's really cool. And I'm not doing a very good job here, but I'm kind of showing you through the symmetry. I didn't even have to paint this side because it did it for me. And so you can, if you want, you know, make more basic designs, and you can use, you know, like I showed before, you can use the actual curve tool, which would probably be better to, you know, do stuff. So it's much more hassle-free for you than what I was frickin' showing. Let's see here. Just quickly edit these. Make that a sharp point. There you go. That'll probably just draw a line for us once it calculates. So yeah. And you can also close off, I believe, the splines too, just like, yeah, so we'd want to make these hard edges so you can actually manipulate the handles just like you would in Photoshop and create your layers and all that good stuff. It's probably because I have symmetry turned on too. Whoops. Pretty sure I have to fill it. But yeah, you can do all sorts of things like that, which is really, really cool. Which is very, very nice. It might actually have been this tool I was thinking about. As I was saying, but yeah, you can also, you know, without using the stroke type of deal, you can also do, you know, fill, which actually probably would have been better. And you can see I can even click off like you could in Photoshop where the model isn't. And you can see I can make shapes just like this. This actually tool would probably be better. But yeah, so you have tons of tools in here to do all this stuff. And it's really, really great and pretty awesome. So let me just delete this layer now. So yes, symmetry and all that good stuff is very much possible, and I think even better than what Photoshop has because it's all real time, and you can do more than just, and you can actually do rotation symmetry too, like not just on the axes, but that's what it has it set up basically. So we're just going to turn on our high resolution lighting. So now, how do you get your base out of the program? Well, it's pretty simple. You go up to textures, you go to export, and you just want all layers color. Nothing else really matters because NASCAR 2003 doesn't use normal or displacement or metalness or roughness, none of that. You just want all layers. And I've already kind of saved it just to test things out, so I'm just going to overwrite, call it color, so it's easy to find. So now it saves. So then, if we go back into here, actually I should go to Photoshop first. So now we're just going to open up our thing that we exported. So this is what it exported. Now it looks really weird. That's because unlike what we could paint in Photoshop, it knows how to stretch and put the texture basically everywhere where it should go. Whoops, there we go. Had the selection tool. So now, and also, it even exported the layers we had turned off too, which is really cool. So say you had variations but you didn't want it on, it'll export those, which, since you guys can't see it, I've got it on multi-monitor. It's right here. So I have my lower resolution one that I made in the high res, and it is alpha. It remembers alpha channel too, so you can see what we just want was the lightning, and now there we go. So I'm actually gonna quickly size this down because my template is 1024. But for those that use tone at 2048, you wouldn't have to do this. So now we're just gonna slap it in our template. Don't need that anymore. And then we'll just drag this under. And just so this shows up better. There we go. So now you can see we could continue work. Now with our hyper complex base done, we could continue to do all this stuff basically. You know, add your numbers and stuff. And like I showed in a 3D Coat, you could actually make your own brush folders, like subfolders, and then put car numbers, logos, all that. So you could technically stamp on everything you want in your car and not even touch Photoshop. But personally, you know, Photoshop I think is still very useful for certain stuff. But that's all for that. Now we want to go into the car. So we just got the texture mode. I'm going to quickly import. And so, oh wait, actually I need to save it first. So yeah, say we're done. And then we're going to save as. And I just put it here. I'm going to make it a PNG. Just overwrite. Okay. Now that that's done saving, now we'll go in here. We'll take our thing, and Maya has a preview. Pretty sure 3ds Max does as well. But now you can see from what you would display or give to someone to render out, or if you went into NASCAR 2003, this would be your final product basically. And you can see, just as it was in 3D Coat, it all lines up. And if you can see the UVs here, you can see it's all connecting on every complex side. It's not even stretched. It looks very nice. It went from the roof to the side. We've got the deck lid to the back. And because I outputted 1024, it still looks pretty good resolution. But if you did 2048, but you know, for my painting, I just prefer this resolution. But you can see it's connected perfectly. I didn't actually even turn off the mask, which you should always do if you know, but you know, could turn it off, but I did not, since this is just a tutorial. But you can see that's your final product, really. So I mean, that's really all there is to it once you import the model. That's all I have to say about that mostly. If you want to turn the video off now that you know how to do it, you totally can. I do want to go over just a couple tips though before I do, for those that are still interested. But thank you for everyone else who is watching. For those that are actually still sticking around, let me go back. So if you've got your setup done, instead of having to do this whole process every time, you could just save your scene too. Which it's a scene like a 3D program, which I actually already saved it, but you know, it saves as a 3B because it's 3D Coat, and you can just save. So you could delete all the layers and make a template where it was just, you know, completely blank car, ready to go, and then you could just repaint every time. And because the program has all these presets and stuff, you can also set up your own folders, which I imported a bunch of customs, but you can make a new folder and add a bunch of decals and things you use on a constant basis, basically. And you could set up your workflow so it's even quicker than having to remember and do the whole check UV crap and, you know, the whole beginning half of the video that I've showed you. You can literally just have it here. Also, I highly recommend watching the 3D Coat tutorials, especially the painting tutorials, because a lot of those tools they go over will be very useful for painters in NASCAR 2003. One of them, which is very great, Let me go up here. I've got everything squished together, so... Oh, there it is. Materials. Because this is a professional program that's made to work with the materials in terms of all sorts of, shininess and roughness and stuff, you can create filters on a material that know what to do on your actual car. So if I go up to, let's see here. I mean, it comes with tons of presets, and I think I've imported a couple too, but if I go to like metals, we got all these really cool metals, and we got like, the one that I showed on the sim racing design, kind of like a scraped version. So if I actually open this up, so it's going to show a preview here for me. Probably going a little slow because I'm trying to record at the same time. Oh wait, that's not what I wanted. Yeah, there we go. So you can see a preview, and you can make your own materials basically, which there are videos on YouTube how to do it, but I just wanted to show in terms of NASCAR 2003. So like with this material, I'm going to fill, oops, I'm going to go here and fill whole layer. So now it's going to fill it. It's just processing. There we go. So you can see I've already made a texture material that had kind of scrapes, so you can make a really cool design with your car and do something like this on the go, and it all connects together everywhere because it's in the 3D Coat program, and it knows, like, let's try this scraped up one up here. Whoops, cancel. Fill whole layer. So you can set up a material to select edges and wear them down automatically. And I believe, so there you go. So the program automatically knows how to scrape up edges, and there's tons of other parameters you can do too. You can make a material, or actually I could even paint, but you can make a processed procedural material that does it for you. Or you could actually just create it manually, but I highly recommend, why not just use the material if you want a certain design. But you can also, with painting tools, and we'll keep it yellow, you can go up to the top, this little box, and you can tell it how to paint. So like, I could do more on the top. So even though I have the brush here and I'm painting everywhere, I've told the program I only want to paint mostly on top. Oh, I've got still the line. Crap. Let's go back to regular. Oh, whoops. And again, I believe it's, yeah, clear layer. I want to turn off these things. And I need to go back. I was also, you can paint materials separately too. I want to go back to a brush. And now, I think it's a little too light there. Let's see, got the brush. Oh yes, I have to close out of this, duh. So now, even though I'm painting, it's mostly catching on the top parts of what I'm doing. It's probably a little hard to tell, but it's not catching the bottom as I'm painting or something cool like that. But you can set up all sorts of ways to paint stuff. And then because it's a new layer, I've got these set up. I'm sure there's a way to default it to 0, but for the most part, when you're doing these programs, you don't actually have to do that stuff. Let's go back to Smart Materials. And I want to just close that, yeah. I'm not actually sure why my window's showing up still. Let me switch to another mode. Anyways. But yeah, for a demonstration, it's pretty cool that it can do these type of things, and you can tell it, more on convex, more on concave. So you can see, now I'm just painting on the edges because that's what the material was told. I can actually just paint it manually if I wanted. So, I mean, you can do some really wacky stuff here. So, just paint like a blue, and then it's going to go like a purple. So, I mean, you can see already the type of insane stuff you can do. And yes, you can. I know people are like, oh, you can do this in Photoshop too. It's like, yes, but can you do it with ease, and can you spend less time wasting your time when you know exactly what you want to do? in Photoshop, connecting everything and doing all that stuff when you could just do it this quickly, this easily. I mean, it's just, for me doing a garbage tutorial, you have to admit, guys, this actually could pass for a pretty decent base, and I literally just used procedurals and just did something really crappy. But I mean, I wanted to show you guys, you really should watch the tutorials, and maybe I'll do if you guys really want to see, I could go over more in depth, more of these tools and stuff. But I mean, for the most part, I think you guys, especially the professional painters that are probably watching this, like the two of you, you could find out for yourself and get exactly the results you want, all that good stuff, because I definitely don't need to go over everything for everybody when they can get it themselves. When the stuff is out there for them to find and do. But you know, as a test, I just wanted to show how this thing works, and it's pretty cool. Okay, so one more thing I forgot to mention again, and I feel I should put in here since I've got all this equipment set up to record, so might as well shove it in at the end. This video is already 1 billion hours long anyways. But anyways, what I wanted to show is something that also is very powerful and used a lot in Photoshop that this tool can do as well, starting with the layers. So if I just paint something on here really quick, and then do a different color, and we'll make a new layer. Now I keep forgetting, but you can duplicate layers too, so you don't have to keep doing what I'm doing and setting up these values, just turning them off every time. But you can just do it like that, so we'll just paint over this a little. So just like Photoshop, you have blend modes. So you can see you've got all these blend modes. So you go to overlay, vivid light, you know, basically all this stuff, multiply. So you do have all the blend modes as well, which is very, very useful. And so you can still do that same type of stuff that you want. Also, in it, you can set up mask. So I'll make a new layer here and do all the zeros. You could do like mask stuff, so there's like a freeze tool, and you can set up alphas too. Like, I mean, I don't know why you'd want to do lightning, but I believe you can. Yeah, so you can even import a thing like that, and I believe now if I start painting, just close that. So yeah, you can see it's ignoring where I've put the alpha, or you can just do straight up. So we'll do up to freeze, unfreeze all. Now it just disappears. We'll just do actual brush. Oops. Yep. And we want to make sure that it's set to standard. Oh yeah, and we're also gonna make sure we're set to standard, I think. But yeah, so you can freeze an area out. And then if I try to paint, you'll see it's now gonna block. And now if I just get rid of freeze all, so you can see it's masked out that area. So say you've got a Doritos, hey, you know, I'm not sponsored by them, I swear. I just use this because it's a complex shape. So say we've got let's put this on a separate layer too, actually. Say you've got, whoops, got color on, and we want to turn this stuff off. So say you've got Doritos, and for some weird reason you can't paint under the layer. I don't know. Maybe you have a base already and you just lost the original or something. I have no clue. You know, you could go in and then, whoops, and just go to freeze. And you could use tools too to define, you know, where you're going. So I mean, it's going to be extremely rough. I'm just going to go around. Whoops. Forgot I'm not using the stick one. But yeah, there's one you can stick to the model, I believe. And then you could go in and paint how you want. I believe this one. Let's make sure. Attach to surface. There you go. That's what you want. So now if I was to move around, I'm pretty sure. Just make it straight edge. If I come down here. But yeah, anyways, you get the idea. You can like attach to surface something and then, you know, set it up as complex as you want. And then you could literally mask out an area basically, which is really, really cool. Pretty sure I wasn't using the right thing, but I actually just set a freeze right there. But yeah, you have so many tools at your disposal to do all this crazy stuff basically, which is really, really cool. Let's just go back to regular paint. So, you know, I could just paint over everything. But this tool is very, very good for what you need in terms of a design that you probably wanted to do or you did and it wasn't as good. I highly recommend, like I said, looking at all the tutorials and then watching those, because then you can actually see exactly what you want to do with the tools to get the design you're looking for. And it'll be so much better than trying to do it in Photoshop, probably, for a lot of certain processes and stuff. But as you can see, there you go. Really crappy, but I froze the area I didn't want to paint on and then kept it that way. But yeah, that's enough explanations of tools. You can find the rest, but hopefully this was very useful for you guys. And so now, finally, until next time, I'll see you later.